So, a while back, we finally got a release date for Trails Through Daybreak 2 in the West, on Valentine's Day no less. And I'm really excited to jump back into Calvard once it releases, since I definitely won't be doing anything that day. Anyways, since there's still a few months away, I decided I would use some time in between to finally cover one of the few titles I've wanted to get around to for a while, and that is the action RPG The Legend of Nayuta: Boundless Trails. A game I was originally going to cover during my Trails playthrough, but I was never certain where it fit throughout the Trails universe, so I decided to just focus on the mainline titles. But now that I'm all caught up, I think it's time to finally tackle it on the channel while we wait for Daybreak 2. So did I love it? Did I hate it and everything it stood for? Well, let's get into the video and find out, shall we? Starting off first and foremost here, let's get into talking about this game's graphics. Because personally, I kinda like how the game looks in the visuals department. I know there are some complaints in regards to the character models for the way they look, having a more humanistic shape, and wishing that Falcom just kinda stuck to their iconic chibi designs that were on the PSP. And while I can see where they are coming from, I can't exactly say I hate what we got in Nayuta. Yeah, I won't deny I think the models have an issue or two. I'll get into those later. But for the most part, the models and things like the backgrounds and especially the monsters are genuinely visually pleasing to look at. I think my favorite designs were the boss monsters you fought, as they all had impressive levels of detail put into them. Kind of a shame that there isn't stuff like more fan art of them in general, because they do look really cool. Plus, I like the little details that they added in stuff like Nayuta's outfit and weapon actually changing in the overworld depending on the type of equipment you have on. Games like Dragon Quest IX or the DS Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles that not a whole lot of people really remember did stuff like that, and it's always been really cool when it's included. It's a unique, albeit flawed look that for the most part works in the game's favor. Kinda makes me wonder if there are any more games in their library that look like this. But outside of that, that's all I've really got to say in terms of graphics. So with that covered, let's get to talking about the gameplay, shall we? So when I saw the gameplay for Nayuta, I had to admit I was kind of intrigued. I had originally assumed that the game would be more in line with Trails' signature combat, you know, turn-based and all that. But when I saw the gameplay taking more inspiration from games like Ys and Xanadu, by making it a full-on action RPG, two Falcom franchises I have very little experience in, I was kind of curious to see if I would like it. And after beating the game, I say, I do enjoy it quite a bit. The combat is smooth and responsive, there's a lot of cool abilities to unlock for both Nayuta and his magic-using partner Noi, but out of everything, there are three aspects in particular I enjoy the most. First is the combo system. So, Nayuta has this mode where every time you hit someone, you get a point, and the more the hit combo goes on and on throughout the level, the more passive buffs you obtain. These buffs range from increased damage, to more money, to more crits. However, if you get hit by an enemy, the counter will reset to 0 and you lose all of your buffs, giving you a nice incentive to improve so you don't get hit and keep your boosts. The second idea was the lunchbox system, whereby either talking to your sister or entering the menu, you can use materials you have gathered in the levels to make lunchboxes to take with you, which, while having the main function of restoring your health in a pinch, can be used as a passive buff in a level, or even as an experience boost if you need to get another level up. Plus, a cool feature is that the more lunches you make, the more lunchboxes you get to unlock for dungeon exploration. So it actively encourages you to indulge in gathering to make new materials. Or meals, I call them materials. And last but most certainly not least, I gotta give a shout out to the ranking system. So throughout every level, you have this little stamp card with you at all times. Every time you complete a level, you get a star to fill up a spot on the card. This is one of the 3 you can earn on each course, with other star requirements usually being tied to things like objectives or opening chests in the set level. Each star is then used to fill a spot on that stamp card, that, once you filled it, you can talk to your sword master, who will teach you a new technique like air dodge, more combos, or making your bonus combos more effective. It's an overall pretty fun system that further encourages you to improve your skills so you can obtain more stars and in turn gain more skills. And that's really all I've got to say in terms of my positives for gameplay. So how about we get into the positives of Nayuta's story next? They were good. I don't think Nayuta's story was amazing. I personally felt it was like pretty underwhelming and forgettable in comparison to many other Falcom narratives I've experienced over the years. But that doesn't mean I think the story was particularly awful. It's fine enough for what it sets out to do. I'll get into my issues of it later. It's paced fine, and the world you explore is interesting. So what's the game even about? Well, it stars a boy by the name of Nayuta Herschel. Yes, really. as he returns home to spend the summer in his hometown of Remnant Isle away from university, with the hopes of reopening his everyman business with his childhood friend and fellow training disciple Signa. Until one day, a large tower shaped to ruin falls from the sky and the two go to investigate, where they end up finding a fairy by the name of Noi at the top. And it's there you encounter the game's main antagonist, Zest, and his right hand, Salem, who then takes an item known as the Master Gear from Noi. Signa tries fighting them, or to be more specific, Salem loses badly, and deciding to spare their lives out of pity. The two then take Noi back to Nayuta's place to treat her wounds, who then explains to them that the Master Gear Zek stole is one of the only ways to stop him. She then takes off and opens a portal to her world that the two bros follow. They learn this other world is known as Lost Heaven, and Zex plans to destroy it for his own goals. Signa and Nayuta chase after this man, with the two separating due to Signa wanting to handle everything himself and not burden his best friend with some of the messier parts of stopping evil. Of course, Nayuta ain't gonna let that happen. So after forging an alliance with Noi and later a girl named Kreia who's lost all her memories, they must now stop Zest and the many guardian beasts from running rampant, while saving the many fairies that were sealed along with finding where Signa went. It's much more simple and straightforward in comparison to the other Trails brothers it has, but again, I don't think it's bad. It's got some big issues that I'll talk about in a minute, but for its pros, it's pretty well paced, has some good twists, and I do kind of think it ends on a satisfying note. I won't go super into spoilers so you can experience for yourself, and that's kind of all I really had to say in regards to the plot. So let me get into my last bit of praise, and that's Nayuta's soundtrack. I love when a game comes with a great soundtrack, and like many of other Falcom titles, the OST delivers amazingly. Composed by the group that I'm pretty sure does all the other Falcom games, just simply known as Falcom Sound Team JDK, they deliver an immensely satisfying set of songs that are downright amazing to listen to. Highly recommend checking out the tracks online if you don't have an interest in getting the game. I'll try to find a link to leave in the comments down below for it, and that's all I've got to say in terms of Nayuta's pros. So now it's time we got into its cons.
So now that I have given Nayuta the praise I genuinely believe it deserves, let's get into its cons. Starting off with graphics. So originally for this spot, I was going to talk about the faces on the models, as during my playthrough I thought they looked a little bit weird and kind of creepy, but upon my revisit of this footage, I think that might have just been an overreaction. So I'm going to focus on something else that I thought was weird to look at, and that was the movement of the models in certain scenes. Now, while I still do think the game looks pretty nice, there's these moments during cutscenes where they try to be more cinematic with the character movements, and honestly, it just looks incredibly stiff as a result. This is more of a nitpick than anything else because I'm certain this was probably a budget and hardware restraint. But it's sort of like when you go back to stuff like Cold Steel and watch Laura vs. V, and you're just going to see how stiff the movement looks when you're not playing the game for yourself. Characters look fine when they're moving around, but it's when they try to do the more dramatic stuff, like clashing swords or drawing weapons, that you start noticing it. Other than that, I don't have any other complaints about graphics though, so let's move on to gameplay issues next.
Like visuals, I actually don't have a whole lot to be upset about. I enjoyed the combat enough to where I was never super bored or anything like that, but I did have some complaints. The first being the bosses being incredibly hit or miss. Some were absolute bangers like the one-on-one battle with Salem, or my absolute favorite being the boss where you have to face it in ball form while going up the sanctuary. I'm still beyond amazed at how they got something like that working on a PSP of all things. Massive props to the team. Unfortunately, every other boss was either mediocre or just plain boring. The first Guardian you fight has you constantly jumping up to hit it in a similar vein to something like the Trickmaster from Kingdom Hearts 1, which is such a great boss to emulate, and because everyone loves that guy. The final boss drags on like 3 times as long as it actually needs to, and the Fire Temple boss, the Fire Temple boss. It legit might be my least favorite fight in the game. I don't know why they made the mechanics for getting to his health being attacking and destroying all 4 of his legs in order to actually deal real damage to him, but holy fuck does it make the fight go so long and turn it into such an insane slog to get through. These bosses were so unfun, it actually made me skip the post-game solely because I just didn't want to fight them again. That's how much I disliked them. Other than that, I don't have many other complaints about gameplay. I was originally going to complain a bit about the club weapon you can get, but that's more a nitpick than anything else. Plus, it's like super easy to ignore it. So let's wrap up the gameplay complaints and move on to the issues with the story and characters. Well, I could tell you that if I actually remembered what happened. I'm not even joking here when I say that these might be the most forgettable characters I've seen from Falcom. Now, they are not terrible. I didn't walk away from this game actively hating them. But boy howdy, I have a lot of trouble remembering anything that was cool about them. They are all just so there. Some of the characters like Noi, Nayuta, Signa, and Kreia were alright. Everyone else was completely forgettable. The villain, barely remembered his name until I had to look it up. The love interest does basically nothing, despite being on the cover. Hell, she's not only on the cover, she takes up probably the most space on the cover. She doesn't do anything except for like making you lunchboxes for a short time and get jealous. So why she take up so much room, Falcom? Maybe they just liked her a lot, I don't know. The story, as predictable as you could guess. The whole game just feels so remarkably dull, but maybe the better word for it is safe. I think safe is the best word I could say. It feels like a narrative made for a game to fill a time slot. There's not really any charm I could find in there. There's no real interesting themes. It's all just so generic. And that's the worst part about it all. It's just safe and generic. It results in a very forgettable product. That's a damn shame because honestly, there's potential in this world. I liked a couple of the ideas this game would push. But I never found myself genuinely invested. And that really disappointed me. With that said, that's kind of everything I have to say about this game's cons, so I'm going to move on to my final thoughts now. I know that now we're at the end of the video, and I sound like I've been a little more cold than necessary. And maybe that is the case. But honestly, I think that cruelty comes from the fact that I was just expecting so much more from this game. And once I played it, I just couldn't really feel anything that I usually did when I played a Falcom title. Is it a bad game? No, not in the slightest. Is it amazing? No. I think it's a game that fits perfectly into the fine category. And that's honestly my issue with it. It's just such an okay game that I walk away not really caring about ever seeing it again. This whole review was actually meant to be longer, but I just couldn't find it in me to care about this game more than I already tried to. And that's why my final rating for this game is a very okay 6 out of 10. If you're interested in this title, I'd say get it on sale. Maybe it'll resonate more with you than it did for me. With that out there, thank you for watching. If you liked the video, do me a favor and like and sub down below. Hit the bell for notifications on all of my stuff. Comment if you're up for a chat or just want to help me with the algorithm. Have a nice day, folks, and I'll see you next time for more RPG content.